Namaste and a hearty welcome to Soft Talk. Today, let's discuss this Afghan crisis and what it means for Nepal. Last week, we had an informal uh, gathering, a meeting of minds about the unfolding crisis in Afghanistan and what it means for Nepal. We are a group of amateurish readers, watchers of international affairs, and we were discussing the crisis, the Afghan crisis, and implications for Nepal. This event, this informal brainstorming session, provided us an opportunity to escape from these troubling waters of Nepal. For the time being, we just pretended as if our land of the brave and the home of the free, I have twisted that American thing a bit, were peaceful with our warlords like politicians from the hills, from the Himalayas and the Tarai, putting national interest and people above all else. That is hardly the case, but we just pretended that everything was honky dory in this part of the globe. Okay, that impromptu session on the Afghan crisis gave us an opportunity to forget about uh, unprecedented crisis that we face as a nation located between the two superpowers of the future, that is that they are China and India, of course. Indeed, two or more heads are better than one. They are better than one if they do not bang against each other. And our little Sabha, to just borrow this Afghan word for it, a miniature Loya Jirga of sorts, seem to prove just that. A cursory rereading of the history of Afghanistan shows how the British Empire bit the dust that was during the First Anglo-Afghan War. That event prompted the retreat from Kabul in 1842 and marked the end of a 3-year British military, what I call, misadventure. Then the Soviets came in the 1980s with a communist propaganda of their own. It was then called the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The USSR sent her troops in support of a tottering regime, a tottering communist regime that was ruling with the iron fist of its own. This tottering regime was riding roughshod over civil liberties. It was not even bothering to spare the lives of political prisoners. Sorry for my sore throat. Moreover, radical land reform programs, measures, radical land reform measures of the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, as it was known by that name back then. that those radical land reform measures of that communist regime had become deeply unpopular in rural areas of Afghanistan. It's a very, it's a country steeped in traditions, and there are rural power structures that rule in Afghanistan. It was more so at that time when the Soviets came with men and machine. As a result, Mujahideen fighters, Maoist groups, and Shiite organizations waged a struggle in the backdrop of a US Soviet Cold War. These motley group of Mujahideen fighters, Maoist groups, and Shiite organizations started this struggle against the communist regime. Things to note here are that there was this generous support from the United States, Pakistan, China, Saudi Arabia, England, and even Iran for this joint struggle against the communist regime. This struggle ultimately caused a mother of all surprises. It caused the collapse of the communist regime in Afghanistan that was backed up by none other than the USSR. That was an arch rival of another superpower of the time, that was the United States. This Soviet mission had begun in December 25, 1979. That was the Christmas of 1979, and this mission ended in mid-February 1989. Uh, in mid at the time, in mid-February 1989, what happened was this: the United uh, Soviet Socialist Republics, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, announced on mid-February 1989, the withdrawal of all its troops from Afghanistan. That was not the end of surprises that Afghanistan was throwing, by the way. 2 years later, on December 25, 1991, that was, sorry, December 25, 1991, the USSR dissolved formally. It disintegrated into 12 independent republics. They were Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Moldova, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Georgia. Georgia just plunged into a civil war after this dissolution of the Soviet Union. But ultimately, it just became one of those 12 independent republics born out of the womb of the Soviet Union. Looking back, the American engagement in Afghanistan helped create a force that defeated the mighty USSR. But this series of surprises that Afghanistan was throwing would not end there. As I already, as I have already said, this engagement also ended up giving birth to the Al Qaeda network that was behind the September 9/11 terrorist attacks on Twin Towers in New York. After that attack on homeland, the United States declared a war on terror with Afghanistan as a major theater. 20 years later, the United States is pulling out of Afghanistan along with NATO forces. This pull out comes in the wake of a Taliban takeover of almost all of Afghanistan, save the Panjshir Valley where the Northern Alliance holds sway. Isn't it surprising that this sole superpower, with all her allies on the ground, is pulling out of Afghanistan? I think it's a grandmother of all surprises. If the Soviet pullout was the mother of all surprises, then the US pullout from Afghanistan is the grandma of all surprises as of now. The cakewalk like Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, despite the presence of 3 lakh strong, well equipped Afghan National Army, which is said to have this army, this 3 lakh strong Afghan National Army, is said to have received military aid, including training from the US. This uh, Taliban takeover and this US pullout, this NATO pullout from Afghanistan will go down in the military history of the world as one of the greatest riddles of all times. I'm sure of that. But then the Soviets and the Americans can take solace in the fact that the mighty Mughals, the Persians, had also beaten the dust in Afghanistan. So they can take solace in the defeats that Afghanistan exacted on foreign forces. On foreign forces, of course, empires in different periods of time have paid heavy prices for their military misadventures in Afghanistan. The colossal losses of these empires often hog the headlines, while the pain and the suffering and the tears and the hardships of the Afghans, the innocent Afghans caught in these wars, do not get enough space in our media pages, in other forums. Then comes the question, what are our concerns vis-a-vis the Afghan crisis? The recent turn of events in Afghanistan are a matter of serious concern for its extended neighborhood that consists of South Asia, by the way. Afghanistan happens to be the youngest member of the now comatose South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, RASA. Former USSR constituents Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan share land borders with Afghanistan, Iran, and China. These are the neighboring countries, regions. Even a superficial study of the political map of the world shows how interconnected this extended neighborhood is. It's a very, if you just turn on the map, just study the map, the globe, you'll find that it's a small world. It's an interconnected swathe of land, a huge swathe of land. Uh, things to just thing to ponder over is that a civil war like situation in Afghanistan will have it will push lakhs of Afghan people out of that war ravaged country already, and there are reports that suggest that thousands of people, Afghan people, are seeking a refuge, seeking a home away from home in Pakistan. It is said to have already sheltered 30 lakh Afghan people. India, which is our next door neighbor, is unlikely to remain immune from this serious humanitarian crisis unfolding in the extended neighborhood. uh, our past experiences can be like quite enlightening as to what kind of crisis we face at home. These experiences suggest that turmoil in the extended neighborhood and beyond ends up affecting countries like Nepal profoundly. Displaced populations from a number of countries like Somalia, Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan are already taking shelters in Nepal. The turmoil in Myanmar, the turmoil in Myanmar, also called Burma, has resulted in the inflow of Rohingya refugees to Nepal via Indian territories. Let's return to the 1990s. At that time, the Druk regime of Bhutan drove out more than 1 lakh Bhutanese of Nepali origins from Bhutan into India. This, this exodus was fueled by the Thimphu regime committing atrocities against Nepali communities like arson and rape. On her part, India, which touts herself as the world's largest democracy in every other international forum, drop these victims of the Druk regime into Nepal through the open border, through the open border that it shares with Nepal, instead of pressing the Thimphu regime. India had special relations with the Thimphu regime. This India did not press the Thimphu regime to stop atrocities against these people, uh, and just it did not press the Thimphu regime to take back these people. There is one instance that happened in the May 1997. Two protesters died. Two of these displaced Bhutanese people who were among a group of protesters protesting at the Mechi Bridge, demanding safe that India provides safe passage so that they can return home. Two people died in that when Indian security forces opened fire on a group of uh, Bhutanese nationals of Nepali origin who were protesting at the Mechi Bridge. They were demanding that India provide safe passage for their return home. That was in May 1997. These people, having lived in refugee camps in Nepal for years, are now struggling to rebuild their lives in different countries as part of what is called this third country resettlement program. Once in a while, we hear we read reports about this distress in these communities, some committing suicide and all that because of the trauma that the Bhutanese regime unleashed on these people. Taking lessons from the past, our government and policymakers need to work out ways to deal with a possible multi-pronged crisis resulting from the Afghan crisis. This is the time our government, our policymakers thought about ways to deal with a crisis, a serious crisis resulting from the Afghan crisis in our territories. The first thing, of course, is to just step up efforts, to take marathon efforts towards safe and swift evacuation of Nepalese stranded in Afghanistan. For the officialdom, the time to change their prevailing attitude that this crisis will have no impact on Nepal as the official dom thinks, often thinks that countries like the crisis unfolding in countries like Myanmar, Afghanistan, or any other countries in South Asia, say India, will not have profound impact on Nepal because we don't share this open border. We don't share land borders with any of these countries except China and India. But that is not a sign of mature thinking because of this porous border, this open border, this informal border with India. Any crisis, any humanitarian crisis unfolding in the extended neighborhood is sure to have profound impact on Nepal. So it's time for the officialdom, for the government, for the policymakers to just change their attitude and take measures to just minimize the impact of the Afghan crisis on Nepal. How about just stepping up border security? With this open question, I wrap up this edition of Soft Talk. Please comment on my presentation, share it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.